And Vishy hovers his hand and plays rook h4. Check, and now you need to block with the rook. If you go king g1, there is queen b1 check. So rook h3, he takes, and now knight takes. Then there's a mate, so check, king h1. And rook takes queen. He gives a check, queen comes back, takes on f8, king takes f8 by Vishy, king g3, and rook comes back to e8. So just calmly and coolly here, Vishy here is getting a winning position. King g4, rook c8 played, king h5, and now rook c3, king g6. Vishy wants to chop off the pawn, but remember some of the rules he has for himself. When you find a good move, look for better one. Rook d3, and he's attacking the d4 pawn. There's nothing much more to do. The position is utterly lost. We are right now in the Italian town of Pietrasanta, and on your screen are two amazing chess players. We have the legend, the 5-time world champion Vishy Anand in the background, and the 11-year-old Faustino Oro, one of the youngest talents in the world of chess. Faustino was the youngest IM in the world until recently, when Roman Shosgiev surpassed him. But Faustino is just 11 years old, and this is a 2-game match. It's the clash of generations. And the interesting thing to note here is that Vishy became 5-time world champion even before Faustino was born. That's how young Faustino is. And as Vishy also mentioned in one of his interviews, his own son is actually older than Faustino. That's Akhil. And that's the venue, the playing venue here. A handshake, and game number 1 begins. e4 by Vishy, e5. Knight comes out to f3, knight to c6, and we have bishop to b5, the Ruy Lopez. The time control is 10 minutes plus 5 seconds increment. Knight to f6, attacking the pawn. Vishy pushes his pawn to d3. Vishy is a master of Ruy Lopez. Pawn to b5, bishop comes back, and we have the Arkhangelsk variation. c3 played here, and pawn to d6. Now white short castles, and Faustino brings his bishop back to b6. Vishy brings his knight to d2. Simple development, and black short castles here. So rook comes out to e1. And black plays his knight to e7 with the idea of going to g6. And immediately Anand strikes in the center with d4. Black goes knight to g6. This is always a bit dangerous when you have the knight here, because it can jump into f4. There could be potential sacrifices here. There's a bishop also eyeing on the king side. He plays his bishop to b7. And will Vishy play his pawn to d5? Not yet. First he brings his bishop back to c2, defending and overprotecting the e4 pawn. And rook e8, attacking the e4 pawn once more. And Vishy decides to play on the queen side with a4. He would love to play knight f1, knight g3, but I think he's not in time, because the moment he goes here, Faustino will take, and he has 3 attackers on the e4 pawn. Queen d7 played, pawn to b3, and the idea of this move is very subtle. Vishy wants to play d5, and when c6 is played, he can play c4. And that's exactly what he does. Pawn to d5 on the board. For Faustino, this is all great learning experience here. Knight to h5. Vishy goes knight to f1, improving the position of his knight. White already slightly better. When he was very young, Vishy was called the lightning kid, while Faustino is called the Messi of chess. He plays bishop e3 and wants to trade off these bishops, and I think that's a good idea. Bishop takes bishop. I think knight e3 makes a lot of sense here. Pawn takes e3 does control the f4 square, which is a very interesting solution that Vishy has gone for, but it also makes the structure a bit immobile. Pawn to c6 now by Faustino, and Vishy connects his pawns with c4. The bishop on c2 is a bit unhappy because all the pawns are on the same color as the bishop. Pawn to b4, Faustino tries to put his own pawns on the dark squares, and now knight goes to h2. The queen attacks the knight, knight comes back, and now knight g3. Vishy is coming in with his knights, knight f5, maybe h4, h5 could be on the cards. h6 played here by black. And now rook to f1, threatening some kind of rook f6 at some point. Faustino immediately moves the knight away. And Vishy Anand now plays his knight to f5. I like how he's trying to create some threats here. But the knight is a bit lonely on f5. Knight e7, offering a trade of knights. And he takes on e7. And Faustino can take with the queen or with the rook. Both seem okay actually. He takes with the queen, giving up this pawn, but I think that can be recovered with queen c7. Vishy takes the pawn, queen goes to c7. Oro has 4 minutes 27 seconds. Vishy has 5 minutes 40 seconds. Pawn comes up to a5, blocking the black pawn on a6. And one of the things that Anand would love to do is put pressure on this b pawn. With queen d2 here, with rook a4, and it will be tough to defend. Queen to c5 played, knight comes to f3. And now maybe just, can we go bishop e6? That's possible. But he goes bishop b7. Vishy's nice plan now is knight e1 to d3. He finds it, knight e1 on the board. He's going to d3 and then picking up this pawn on b4. Faustino comes back, queen to a7. You can't go knight d3 now, this is hanging, so rook a4. Very positional chess here by Vishy. Takes and rook b6 can come in. Knight jumps to g5, attacking the e4 pawn. Anand takes the pawn. Now very important to take with the knight, because if you take with the bishop, there is h4, and very strong move there. Oro bit confused there whether to take with the bishop or the knight. He takes with the knight, rightly so. And now queen d3 is a classy move because you are threatening a mate and also threatening rook takes b7. Vishy finds it, queen d3, beautiful move played here by Anand. And maybe the best idea now is f5, giving up the pawn, playing knight g3 and bishop e4. But he goes bishop a8, saving his bishop, protecting the e4 knight. Rook comes to b6. And now pawn to d5 played. Vishy must keep the position closed. Go c5. You can't take here because of check. So he goes, takes, bishop d5. I think now Anand doesn't have the best of positions. Yes, he can take on a6. But black already very active with both his rooks. Queen takes a6 taken. And you can take on a6. Yes, he takes. Could also have moved the queen away. Rook takes a6. Knight goes to d2, attacking the f1 rook and the b3 pawn. And rook comes up to f2, attacking the knight. Knight takes pawn here on b3. And Faustino has managed to equalize this position. What a fight by this youngster. Just 11 years of age. He's already an IM. Trying to become the youngest GM in the world. Bishop c4. Attacking the rook on a6. The rook moves to a7. Vishy does have some pressure on the f7 point. But for now it's defended. A good idea is rook a8. Trading off the active rook. But Oro goes knight to c1. And that's a blunder. Because now bishop a4. Followed by either rook c2 or rook c7. These two pieces are in one line. And Vishy plays rook c7, which is not the best. Should have started off with bishop a4, because now there is rook c8, which is a good move. But Oro goes bishop d3, and that's a mistake now, because while he wants to take and take back with the knight, Anand is just going bishop a4 and attacking the rook on e8. That's his plan. Yes, Vishy finds the move. Knight e2 check. And you don't need to take this, because he would take it back and then it's just equal material. Just king h2. Makes a lot of sense. Good move. And Oro goes rook e6. Knight jumps back to e1. And look at the bishop. Hardly has any squares. Needs to go back to a6. Otherwise, I'll just take and take the knight. Bishop a6 played. And now rook f takes f7. Oh, he goes bishop b3, which is also a strong move. Rook f6 played. Rook takes f6. G takes f6. And he takes on f7 with the rook. What a powerful battery here. f6 hanging. a6 hanging. h6 would hang. King h8, he takes on f6. Vishy cleaning up all of black's pawns slowly and steadily. Knight to c1. And he takes the pawn. King g7. Takes another pawn. And also, Anand has 2 minutes on the clock while Oro has just 9 seconds. Vishy still completely the lightning kid here. Now, the speed demon. Rook d3 played. And Vishy takes the pawn on e5. Rook takes e3. Rook a7 check. If you come king f6, there is knight g4 check. He goes back king f8. And a6. Let's push the pawn. Oh, your knight is hanging, sorry. Even a6 should be okay. Rook e5. Rook b7, a7, a8. Vishy goes for the check with his knight. King g8. Pawn to a6. And this is over. Knight c5. Goes rook e7 check. Very strong move. Rook takes e7. Knight takes on e7. And Faustino resigns. The a pawn is queening. Vishy Anand scores the first win in their match and takes 1-0 lead. There's one more game to be played. This time Faustino will have the white pieces. Vishy will have black. And they will play in 10 minutes or so. And Vishy asks in how much time there? Well, it's about to begin. Let's head over to the second game. Right before the start, Vishy Anand is taking a bit of rest there. And yes, we're about to go. Faustino and Vishy both make their way into the playing venue there. What a beautiful playing venue they have. And as he enters in, this event is actually also hosted by Andrea Bocelli, the famous tenor, Italian tenor. And there we see the FIDE president, Arkady Dvorkovich, is here. He's going to make the first move in the game between Oro and Vishy. It's the president with the deputy president. And e4 by Faustino as move number 1. And Vishy does look a bit calm now with one win in the bag. It's going to be very tough for Faustino to try and make a comeback now. Vishy plays the French defense, an opening that he used to love playing as a kid. And Faustino pushes d4, d5. And pawn to e5. He pushes his pawn to c5, c3. Knight comes out to c6. Knight to f3. We have the advanced variation. Vishy goes bishop d7. The bishop comes out to e2. Knight e7 played here. And he castles. Anand puts his knight on f5, putting pressure on the d4 pawn. With all his pieces, queen b6 is also the idea here. So takes on c5, bishop takes c5, and now maybe just b4 and bishop d3. That seems like a good plan. Faustino plays first the bishop to d3, a good move, threatening to take on f5. I think Vishy might just move his knight away. He goes back to e7, and a good plan now is to play b4, knight d2, knight b3. He first goes knight d2, knight goes to g6, attacking the e5 pawn, the knight to b3, attacking the bishop, bishop goes back to b6, and rook comes to e1. So Anand is slightly passive here. He has less space. He castles, which is a bit risky considering the bishop is lined up here. But I think Anand trusts in his position. Faustino brings his knight to the center. Vishy can take here, but he goes bishop c7, and I love it. He's attacking once, twice, and thrice. And Faustino takes on g6. F takes g6 played, opening up the rook here. Not so sure if that trade was good for white or not, because that was a very strong bishop that Faustino gave up. Queen comes to e2, but white does have complete control over the position. His knight on d4 is kind of immovable. Vishy takes, and Faustino takes back with the pawn. Ooh, he could have also taken with the knight here, but decides to take with the pawn. h6 played, maybe to expand with g5 later. Just stopping knight g5 business. h4. And now bishop to b6. Keeping an eye on the d4 pawn. Bishop goes to d2. Maybe planning to pop out the bishop from b4 to attack the f8 rook. So the rook comes to c8 and wants to enter c2, but Faustino challenges the rook, doesn't let Vishy pass. But look at Vishy's time on the clock. He has 8 minutes 38 seconds. Anand is hardly thinking. Faustino down to 5 minutes 53 seconds. Queen to d3, attacking the pawn on g6. And Vishy just simply defends it with queen f7. And now the bishop comes out to b4, attacking the rook there. Anand plays his rook to e8. Bishop to c5 played. And what Faustino is doing is he's trying to trade off these two pieces to leave himself with a good knight versus a bad bishop. But first Vishy attacks the rook. Rook comes to d1. And now pawn to a6 played, maybe to activate this bishop via b5. Queen to a3. He's attacking the bishop here. Queen, bishop d8. And queen comes up to b4. Bishop comes out to b5 for Vishy. And if he gets the chance, Vishy would start liking to play on the king side. Rook e1 played, rook d1. And queen f4 played here by black. And rook comes up to c3. Just against any tactics that could happen. And Vishy puts his rook on c7. He wants to transfer the rook to f7, where it would have some significant attacking chances. And Vishy's time on the clock is 5 minutes 16 seconds. Faustino has 3 minutes 30 seconds. Bishop c6 played. How is black going to break through? That's the $1 million question. Bishop b6 takes. And I think Faustino's attempt to trade off the bishops looks right positionally, but concretely now the rooks get a free hand along the f file. Rook e3 played, and now rook df8 played. Faustino definitely feeling the pressure. He goes rook to c2, and queen to g4. First threat is to take here on f3. King comes up to h2. And Vishy now goes rook to f4. So there's pressure on the d4 pawn and also h4 pawn. Could be an idea. b3 played by Faustino, just solidifying his structure. g5. Vishy takes the break in the center, on the king side, opening up the white king. Faustino trades, and here Vishy goes. It's now a huge attack. Queen e7 played here by Faustino. The queen gets in. It's threatening to take knight g5 or queen g5. Taking on f3 is not possible. Queen f5. Beautiful move here. And now you must be afraid of some rook e8 business. So if you take, that's the best move here. But he blunders with knight g5, and rook e8 is trapping the queen. That's a huge mistake here by Faustino. His queen is trapped. Rook takes c6 now played, but that's not going to be enough. And Vishy hovers his hand and plays rook h4. Check, and now you need to block with the rook. If you go king g1, there is queen b1 check. So rook h3, he takes, and now knight takes. Then there's a mate. So check, king h1, and rook takes queen. He gives a check, queen comes back, takes on f8, king takes f8 by Vishy, king g3, and rook comes back to e8. So just calmly and coolly here, Vishy here is getting a winning position. King g4, rook c8 played, king h5, and now rook c3, king g6. She wants to chop off the pawn, but remember some of the rules he has for himself. When you find a good move, look for better one. Rook d3, and he's attacking the d4 pawn. There's nothing much more to do. The position is utterly lost. Faustino resigns. Vishy wins the match 2-0. And while for many this was no surprise, as Vishy is still top 15 in the world, at least for me, it was a much closer fight than what it suggested. It was a very, very strong play by Anand, just showing that he is still extremely classy. We will next see him in London playing at the FIDE World Rapid and Blitz Team